Hello everyone, and this is my review for TNA Impact's Final Resolution pay-per-view on 2012. First of all, I'm going to go off and say this right away before I go into everything else. All the matches just seemed to be really great tonight. They were well performed, well done. Great in-ring action tonight, which is what you typically get when you tune into the TNA Impact Wrestling. But for this pay-per-view in general, and sometimes this does happen, at least in my own feeling, when they're in Orlando, it just feels that even though it's a pay-per-view and it's somewhat of a pay-per-view type setting, it just felt like it was an elongated Impact show in general. And I'm not saying that as necessarily as a full-on bad thing. It's not the best thing that could possibly happen for the pay-per-view itself, because you're kind of giving it what people see on a weekly basis for free, or on their cable provider that they pay for at that point. But now you're making them pay a little bit extra for it, and this is definitely one of those cases. Like I said, all matches tonight, phenomenal, great matches, fun to watch them all. But it just felt like it was an elongated Impact show versus being a standalone pay-per-view itself. And one good example is right at the beginning of the show. Typically, right at the beginning of the show, especially if you're going into a typical Impact Wrestling, you're going to start with a promo of some kind. So they started tonight off with James Storm coming out there, and he pretty much was calling out Bobby Roode the entire time, but he ends up getting Kazarian. And this led to an impromptu match between the two of them. Now, don't get me wrong, very good match between the two of them. I'm actually never opposed to impromptu matches on pay-per-view, but they didn't necessarily need the 5 to 7 minute promo beforehand to set up the match like you would see on your typical TV show. They could have just gone off and done the match. They could have spent even a little bit more time on the match and seemed to make it look a little bit more important. But they did spend the time with the promo. And also not a bad promo. If it wasn't pay-per-view, I would have actually complimented the promo in general. The next match being the whole Kenny King and RVD match. Again, great match between the two of them. I wish they had more build-up time for that match in general. I mean, it was just thrown together on Impact itself, and it just came off as just another match that they do. The tag team title match, it ended in disqualification. Obviously, they're going to continue the storyline there with the two tag teams with Chavo and Hernandez and Matt Morgan and Joey Ryan there. I'm actually okay with that. I'm glad they're going to keep the story going into that sense. But a lot of people do get irked when they see disqualifications on pay-per-view in some way, shape, or form. And just the overall feel of the entire show, it felt like it was a elongated Impact show in general. Though, I mean, there are a few examples where it did not necessarily feel that way. The best example of this is the match with AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. A great match. Honestly, probably one of my favorite matches this year was this particular one, which is supposed to be their final meeting. This was a great match, great example, definitive closure into their storyline and how many matches they've had in the past. This is supposed to be their last one. Who knows if that's actually going to be the truth. They might have another one somewhere down the line, but definitely for probably the next year or so, this will be their final match that you'll see between the two of them. So, great match. Phenomenal from beginning to end of the match there. That was it was the highlight of the show, honestly. But to reiterate the point of it, feeling like a elongated Impact show, the main event with Bobby Roode and Jeff Hardy. Yes, you had a definitive winner with Jeff Hardy, you know, you got the win cleanly, and you seem to have definitive closure there, with the exception of the fact of Aces and Eights coming in and attacking Jeff Hardy after the match. Now, granted, it was good. It was good that they decided to make Aces and Eights go over on somebody that night, because they didn't really make them look all that great inside of the 8-man tag team match earlier. So they put them over in this sense, where they had him beat down Jeff Hardy and Bobby Roode afterwards, because, you know, they started to beat down Bobby Roode because he was arguing with them why they didn't help during the match in general. And then you are left with Aces and Eights standing tall over everybody in the ring. And honestly, in my mind, that's something you would do for the end of an Impact show to further the storyline. This kind of leaves you with not necessarily such of a good taste in your mouth in the terms of closure in some way, shape, or form going off of the pay-per-view at the end there. And in all honesty, that kind of hindered the entire pay-per-view in my mind. But once again, the matches tonight were extremely fun to watch. Just great matches from the beginning to the end. No actual title changes on the show, but that doesn't need to always happen either, because you can't just have you just can't have the titles revolving from one person to the next. But overall, great matches, fun to watch matches, pretty much a match of the year candidate with AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. But in the end, it just felt like that the show itself was just a very elongated Impact. But, you know, sometimes that's what it happens. You had that feel mostly because they're in Orlando, and it's where they do all their Impact shows, and it did not have the pay-per-view type vibe that some of their other pay-per-views can do. And I think it did definitely hurt the pay-per-view in general for that feeling. That's my review for TNA's Final Resolution pay-per-view. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.